Being part of the circle of greats that includes Rod Stewart, Eric Clapton, George Harrison, and Jeff Beck, this band's career spans over 50 years. They've had 25 Billboard hits, 9 top 10s, have spent a combined total of 355 weeks on the charts, which is almost 7 years, and have sold 120 million albums. It's a band that almost everybody's familiar with. I am, of course, speaking about Fleetwood Mac. Formed in 1967 by Peter Green, Fleetwood Mac's original lineup was Peter Green, Mick Fleetwood, Jeremy Spencer, and Bob Bruning. And they were originally a blues band. Their first performance was at the National Jazz and Blues Festival at the Windsor Racecourse in Berkshire, England, alongside Jeff Beck and Cream. Not bad for a first gig. But almost immediately they had a lineup change, and bassist John McVie joined the band. Bob Bruning stepped aside. Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac would release their first album, Fleetwood Mac, in 1968. And it spent 37 weeks on the UK charts. Also in 1968, they released the album Mr. Wonderful, and it had contributions uncredited by a woman named Christine Perfect, who we'll talk about later. Also in 1968, they released their #1 UK hit, Albatross. While Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac was mostly unknown to American audiences in 1969, they were the UK's biggest band, outselling both the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. In 1970, Peter Green left the band and they became simply Fleetwood Mac. And Peter Green had chosen a name as a nod to his friends Mick Fleetwood and John McVie. Also during this period, Christine Perfect, now Christine McVie as she had married John, became a part of Fleetwood Mac. She had previously been the vocalist and keyboardist for a British band called Chicken Shack, and they had had a hit with the cover of Etta James' I'd Rather Go Blind. Christine would go on to write many of the love songs for Fleetwood Mac, and she would also contribute artwork to their third album, Kiln House. From 1970's Kiln House to 1973's Mystery to Me, they saw a bunch more lineup changes and decided to take a break. The problem was they had a tour underway, and their manager Clifford Davis was not about to try to reschedule an entire tour, so he just created a fake Fleetwood Mac, and the tour went on, and it was mostly accepted by audiences. The problem was that the real Fleetwood Mac was now restricted from performing in the UK, so it motivated them, with hesitation from Christine, to make a change, and they moved to LA. 1974 would see the first American member of Fleetwood Mac in Bob Welch, who was a guitarist and songwriter, and he ended up writing most of the songs for their next album, Heroes Are Hard to Find. But after more internal drama, Bob stepped out, and the band was again in need of a guitarist, and they felt like they needed a miracle. Christine's mother, who considered herself a psychic, said, "You will find it on Orange Grove." Now let's take a step back and look at an American band that was going through changes at the same time. The band's name is Fritz, and they were in need of a vocalist. The guitarist had remembered a gal that had sat next to him in a park while he was playing guitar one day and harmonized with him, and he was really impressed with her voice, and so he reached out to her. This guitarist's name was Lindsey Buckingham, and the girl, Stevie Nicks, who just happened to live on Orange Grove Avenue in LA. Shortly after Stevie Nicks joined Fritz, they ended up opening for Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin, and there began to be a buzz created about them, and it caught the attention of producer Keith Olsen. Keith Olsen was unimpressed with Fritz as a band, but really liked the way Lindsey and Stevie sounded together and told them, if you want to record an album, you've got to leave Fritz behind. And so they did. So they moved in with Keith Olsen and recorded their album Buckingham Nicks. The album was more known for its album cover than its music, and the couple was dropped. Now is when things converge. Fleetwood Mac was looking for a guitarist, Buckingham Nicks were looking for a label, and the common denominator was Keith Olsen. After Bob Welch had left the band, Mick Fleetwood reached out to Keith Olsen and asked if he knew a guitarist that was looking for a band. He had heard Buckingham Nicks and liked the way they sounded, and so Keith recommended Lindsey to the band. The catch was, Lindsey wasn't going without Stevie. It was a package deal. And while Fleetwood Mac wasn't really looking for another member, and Stevie didn't really play an instrument, they liked Lindsey's guitar playing and songwriting, and so they said yes. And after a couple hours of discussion with Keith Olsen, Lindsey and Stevie agreed and said, okay, we'll try it for 6 weeks. And that's when the supergroup we know today as Fleetwood Mac was born. The new lineup's first album was 1975's Fleetwood Mac, as some see it, their White Album. Warner Brothers liked the way it sounded and thought it might move 350,000 copies or so. Well, it moved 1 million copies in the first 6 months, became the #1 album in the US, and it would eventually sell 7 million copies. In 1976, Fleetwood Mac would release the album Rumors, which is largely seen as an autobiographical look into the drama the band was going through at the time. It would become the 5th most purchased album of the 70s, the 9th most purchased album of all time. It would earn the band $100 million, $10 million of which came from one song, Don't Stop. The album also included the only #1 hit Fleetwood Mac ever had, and that song was Dreams. This album would earn them a Grammy for Album of the Year and also earned them Album of the Year on Dick Clark's American Music Awards. It would go on to sell 40 million copies. 1979 would see the release of the album Tusk, and it was kind of seen as a failure because of the huge dip in sales it saw compared to Rumors, but it would end up selling 4 million copies, and in 1984 was certified double platinum. In 1981, the band took a 9-month break, during which 3 solo projects were released. Mick Fleetwood's The Visitor, Lindsey Buckingham's Law & Order, and Stevie Nicks' album Belladonna. That same year, the band released the album Mirage, kind of a Rumors too. It ended up spending a month as the #1 album in the United States and included the hits Gypsy and Hold Me. Fleetwood Mac would then take another break, a longer break, and wouldn't release anything until 1987's Tango, which had the hit Little Lies. Many see the years 1988 to 2013 as kind of void of any essence of what Fleetwood Mac was, but they would reunite again in 2014 and 15 for the first time in 16 years to do a world tour. And this world tour would end up being the top grossing tour in the world both years. And then again, due to drama, they had another falling out and wouldn't reunite, and then only to pay respects in 2022 at the passing of Christine McVie. Fleetwood Mac is one of the best-selling bands of all time with over 120 million albums sold, and they have such recognizable hits as Rhiannon, Dreams, Gypsy, Go Your Own Way, Hold Me, Everywhere, Don't Stop, Landslide, and Little Lies. It can't be denied that Fleetwood Mac was a supergroup, and there are so many more details and so many stories that I just couldn't squeeze into this short program. But it's fair to say that they had a huge impact on the music industry and on the hearts of their fans. Do you have any favorite Fleetwood Mac songs? Do you have any memories about Fleetwood Mac? If so, share them in the comments. Make sure you like this video and hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.